Philips makes laptops. Are you sure? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you enjoyed the two videos about the IBM PS2 Model 30. December is continuing and we've got another DOS related computer today, but this time it's a laptop. Not only is it a laptop, it's a laptop made by Philips. Who knew? So this is a Philips PCL 300, and in fact specifically it's a PCL 304/00. If we look at the Philips computers page on Wikipedia, they do have quite a long list of computers which I wasn't really aware of. But in fact, if you look closely, all of them pretty much are desktops. There's this MSX compatible range here. It isn't until down here, the PCL series, that we get some laptops. And it looks like they only made 4 ranges of laptop, an 8086, a 286, 386, and then a second range of 386s. And what we've got is a 304. Now there's not a lot of information on here, and in fact I generally haven't found a lot of information anywhere about this laptop. But what I did find was this service manual. Thank you once again, Internet Archive. We have managed to save the documentation for this range of computers. So with its small size, high performance, using the newest technology, it's a 386 base PC/SX with a high contrast VGA LCD, high speed 40 megabyte hard disk and a floppy disk drive of 1.44 or 720K. So this is pretty standard for the time. It's got a NiCad battery. This is before lithium ion batteries. What other specs have we got here? So it's a i386sx at 16 megahertz, optional 387. The speed is switchable between 8 and 16 megahertz. It comes with 3 megabytes or 5 megabytes of extended memory. It's got a 640 by 480 VGA screen. No sound card. It's got an internal buzzer. It does have a floppy disk drive. Internal ports for a modem. It's got an external port for a floppy disk drive. Okay, and there's a separate expansion bus. It's got an LCD backlight. It's a black and white screen, and it weighs about 3 kilos. Okay, so about 6.5 pounds. Yeah, look at this power connector. That doesn't look very standard, does it? So this is pretty comprehensive. Tells you about the memory map. Tells you how to use the keyboard shortcuts. Tells you what the hard disk is. It's a Connor CP4044. So that's a 40 megabyte 3-inch hard disk drive. I think it probably means 3.5, but it says 3 in the manual. For further specs, go to chapter 9.2. It's got a Sony floppy disk drive. They're usually pretty reliable. And you get into the system BIOS by pressing Control, Alt and Escape. That's going to be useful in a bit. Tells you how to disassemble it. That might be useful as well. Doesn't look too complicated. Okay, that's refreshing. Tells you about the power supply. Oh, okay. That might be useful. We do have the power supply, luckily. Oh wow, it's even got board schematics. Look at that. Okay, so if you are trying to repair one of these from a, a very basic level, to a high level, with following traces, etc., working out which chips have failed, this has all the information you need. That's really nice. We're not going to be doing that in this video. Devices. So this is the hard disk. So it's a Connor CP4034. That's different from what it said earlier in the book. Doesn't say what the interface is. So that's interesting. Although there are 44 pins on that interface. So hopefully this might be a standard IDE. Let's back up to page 1, see if there's any copyright date on here. No. So we don't know exactly when this was released. Okay, let's have a look at the unit itself. Okay, so we do have the original Philips branded power supply. It's a little bit dusty, and as far as I know it still works. The seller had a picture of the screen on, so I'm assuming it works. And it does have this unique 3-pin connector on the back here on the other end of the cable. Also interestingly, it takes an IEC connector rather than a cloverleaf compact style, but it's a fairly standard information leaf label here, so that's why it has 3 pins, because it actually outputs 2 different DC voltages. Quite common in the early days of notebooks is to have a dedicated voltages come out of the power supply rather than just a single voltage. So here's the system unit itself. Again, it's a little bit grubby, a bit dusty, but it's actually in pretty good condition. It's this fairly tough plastic. It's got a few paint flecks on it. It's got the Philips logo and the PCL 300 kind of branding here, Philips and Philips. Up here it's got a serviced by the Computer Workshop sticker, and hasn't got a date on it unfortunately, but it looks like this machine has had some work on it at some point. It's pretty small in terms of footprint. It's less than an A4 piece of paper. It's obviously quite chunky in terms of thickness, but it's actually, you know, it's not huge. It is quite heavy, and I don't even think this one's got the battery in, but we'll be having a look in a minute. It's got some nice detail on the front. It's got this kind of little recessed bits here. As I say, it's got the Philips logo embossed in the top cover, but it's also got the Philips logos. So it looks like Philips only made 4 laptop ranges, and it looks like 3 of those were released all at the same time. The 286, the 386, and the i386, I'm guessing, were all part of a single product launch. So these are probably a little bit uncommon. I've certainly never seen a Philips laptop. Maybe I will never again. Cool. This reminds me a lot of my first laptop, which was a Dell 386sx, which I have now managed to reacquire. But it's a very similar form factor and very similar colour actually, and very similar kind of design and aesthetics. Anyway, moving on. On the front there is nothing, not even a catch, completely plain. On the side here we do have some stuff going on. We've got the floppy disk drive, by the looks of it. A catch release for the screen, I suspect. There's a little door here with a little tab on it, and underneath there we've got 2 little PS2 connectors, and on the lid here it's labelled keyboard and mouse. A little hole there. That looks suspiciously like it should have a screw in it, so that's interesting. Switch here. Okay, that might be the on-off switch. Let's have a look around the back. WR66387 warranty return, and then the serial number for the warranty return, maybe. That's a bit worrying. So around the back we've got the power input, that 3-pin, very unusual design. We've got 2 connectors that look very similar. What looks like a serial port, and then a dock connector with some corrosion on it. Okay, let's have a look on this side. So there's a door here, but look, yep, goes that way. Aha, so that's the battery compartment, and it is indeed empty. Can't really tell whether there's any corrosion in there yet. Not in this lighting anyway. Kind of looks like the door's been repaired. Maybe. Anyway, that's that. Another little flap with a lever. Okay, so you've got VGA out here. Another hole with nothing in it, so maybe that's intentional. There's a blank here, which is roughly the same size as the VGA connector. So maybe that was for a modem, or did some of the other models only come with CGA or EGA and it had a separate connector further along? Who knows? Another warranty sticker, tested. 16th of May 1994. Warranty void if removed. Okay. And then back to the front. Let's have a look at the bottom. So the bottom is horrible. It's got 3 strips of kind of adhesive tape on it. I don't know what that's for. Reminds me of that kind of tape you'd use to tape down carpet or tiles. It's pretty thick and gloopy. It's got loads of hairs in it and stuff. Thank you for donating those. There is a label, which is now the correct way up. I can just read it through the sticky stuff. Type number PCL 304/00. Here's the serial number. So it looks like it was week 23 of 1991. So for 386, that sounds a little bit late, doesn't it? But that's what it means on that serial number. Then there's a separate label here that you can fill in your own details in, so you can decide if you want to write on there. Nothing on this one. This adhesive tape is covering quite a lot of stuff. It's still got all 4 feet. Oh, and look. So here, it it's got some writing that tells us what these ports were. So the first large pin, which looks like a parallel, is an external floppy disk drive. Then you've got a parallel, then you've got a serial, and then you've got the extension bus. So that's good. There are some screws in the bottom. They seem to be present. Okay, let's open it up. So there's a catch on either side. Okay, the lid's quite stiff in a good way. So yeah, so the lid, the hinge is very loose going down, but it's quite stiff going up. I think it's intentional. And it opens up to a fixed angle by the looks of it. It doesn't look like it's adjustable very much because it's too floppy. On the inside, it's actually in reasonable condition. Well, that sounds nice. Nice keyboard. Tiny space bar, but nice keyboard. It's got a double height enter key, so it probably is a UK specific model. Yeah, I do like the feel of that. That is pretty good. There's a little recess here that probably had function key little things to write on. That's been removed, and underneath is 2 screws. Then you've got hard disk, floppy disk, power and standby lights, and a separate standby button, which probably gets depressed when the lid goes down, I'm guessing. It's got both catches intact, so that's nice. Should we turn it on and see what happens? So weirdly, looking at this, it's got this flat bit with an arrow on it, but it looks like that goes down underneath when the power's in, if I'm reading this correctly. So yeah, so weirdly that was kind of upside down, opposite to what I'd expect. The power light has come on the adapter, the power transformer, so we should have power. I've got no indicator lights on here though. Let's turn it on and see what happens. Oh, okay, there was a beep. The backlight's come on. That's very welcome. Quite often the backlight, quite often the backlight doesn't work in computers this age. Okay, that's not very readable. And there are no controls to control the brightness or the contrast. Is there a keyboard shortcut? Yes, both. So here you've got contrast, here you've got brightness. And there's the function key, so turning the brightness down works. Hasn't really helped with readability. Let's try contrast. Aha! That's looking pretty good. What does it say? So 386 modular BIOS. Let's zoom in a bit. 386 modular BIOS, version 3.04D, dated 1991. Okay, so that agrees with the serial number. Interrupt controller pass, CMOS battery fail, not a surprise. System memory 640K found, testing memory pass, checking unexpected interrupts and stuck NMI pass, testing protected mode pass, sizing extended memory 2048. Okay, so it looks like it's the 3 megabyte version, 2 megabytes of extended memory. Testing memory in protected mode 2688. Testing process exception interrupts passed. The video BIOS is enabled, shadowing is enabled, so is the standard BIOS. CMOS RAM error check battery run setup. Press F1 to continue or Control Alt to escape for setup. Nice having the keyboard shortcut on 3. I can hear a hard disk spinning, so should we just turn it on and see what happens? F1. Boot disk failure, insert system disk or press enter. Okay, so it's not attempting to read the hard disk. I can hear the hard disk spinning though, as I said. So can we go into the BIOS? We can, okay. So what have we got? Award software CMOS setup. So by default it's 1990 is the date. Internal diskette 1.4, external diskette non-correct, hard disk 40 megabytes. That's what it said in the spec sheet on the service guide. Hard disk power down. Boot disk internal. Does that mean the floppy disk? How do we change that? Insert and delete changes values, okay. Okay, so the boot disk is set to internal, so that's the floppy, internal floppy. Hard disk is what we want, so that's good. Or we could select the external. Let's go hard disk. Oh, hard disk has turned itself off. Speed select high, password disable, enable the serial port, disable the modem because we haven't got one. Memory size 1 megabytes, EMS size off, shadow RAM off, Extend memory 384. Okay, so that's slightly different from what that first screen said. Video attributes normal. What does that mean? Oh, so you can reverse, because it's a monochrome screen, you can have it on white on black or black on white. Auto map, what is that? Don't know, bold fonts. Okay, so the most important thing here is this setting with the hard disk as the boot device. F10 records changes. Press F5 to confirm update. Okay, let's see if we can get a boot now. So during that process, it checked all of that memory to pass it, so that must be installed on the motherboard, otherwise we'd have an error at this point. Boot disk failure. Okay, so it looks like it can't access the... Oh, it's forgotten the setting for this. It's forgotten that we wanted to boot off the hard disk. So is that going to always happen because we have a flat CMOS battery? That's going to be really frustrating if it is. So yeah, look here, it checks all that memory. So that must be installed, not just the basic 1 megabyte. Yeah, so I can hear the hard disk spinning, but it's not booting off it. It wants to boot off the floppy disk drive. Okay, let's try and boot off the floppy disk drive. At this point, this computer is 33 years old. There's a good chance that floppy disk isn't going to be working. It's either going to have a stuck head or the belt's going to be gone. Oh, I can hear it. It's definitely spinning, and I can hear the head accessing stuff. And we have a floppy disk access light. Is it going to work? It is. Okay, cool. So this is the boot floppy I made for that PS2 system. I just happen to have it lying around, and it has booted off it. Okay, so it's come to the second part, and it says install to floppy disks, because it obviously doesn't think that there is a hard disk. It says let me change everything else, but I can't change whether I install to floppy disk or not. So yeah, so this can't access the hard disk. Let's see if F-disk can. No, if it's this present, yeah. So unfortunately, it can't find the hard drive. I can hear it spinning. Now that could be because it's faulty mechanically, or it could be because that CMOS setting won't stick. Let's go back in here. So the hard disk is supposed to be 40 megabytes. Do we have any other options? We do. Okay, so we can say none. 60, 40, 30, 20, or none. Okay, well it's not booting off the 40. Let's just try something else. Let's start at the beginning and try 20. So F10 to save. Yes, I am sure. I've taken the floppy disk out. Oh, hang on. We hadn't changed it to booting off the hard disk. No. So the 20 megabyte hard disk option didn't work. Yeah, this setting keeps getting lost. So I don't know if that's because it can't detect the hard disk. This has gone back to 40 as well. So yeah, I think this may not be bootable from the hard disk without a CMOS battery in it that's working. So we may have to take it apart. But we do actually have a part working 386 from 1991. That is very exciting. I've got two other 386 laptops in this form factor. One's a Dell, which is working, and one is a sort of generic branded one, which isn't working, unfortunately. It would be nice to get this one working as well. So I think the first thing we do is try and get off some of these labels. Although they do give some indication about how old this is, I think in the long run, it's probably going to be better without them. So I find the best way of removing labels is with this kind of chewing gum remover and a flat plastic blade. Seems to work most of the time. And we're lucky in this case that it hasn't gone down into the little cracks. Oh, that's a little bit. One down, a few more to go. So the stuff on the bottom is pretty extensive. There's an awful lot of it. I'm not sure that this is going to work, but we'll give it a go. Just start at one end. Not a big fan of all the hairs. Yep, it is working, but it's just going to take a lot of time and a lot of fluid. That crack was my tool, not the laptop, don't worry. Yeah. Cue SpongeBob.
2 hours later.
So this is working, but it is going to take quite a long time, and I'm going to run out of sticker remover. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to disassemble this and see if we can get that hard disk working. So we do have the service manual for this, as we saw earlier on, so it should be fairly easy to take this apart. We've got an exact description of how to do that. Let's start by taking these two bottom screws out. Next step is to remove the 3 screws across the back. Now unfortunately there are only 2, so somebody's definitely been in here before. Some of the screws are quite corroded as well, so it could be there's a leaky battery inside, it could be that it's just been stored in a damp environment. Next we've got to remove the screws from inside the video port. Now again, there should be 2 in there, there's only 1, and on the other side it's the same. There are 2 screws under here in theory, but again it looks like there's only 1. Looks like there's only 1, somebody's been in here before. Next job is to remove the 2 screws that are exposed here. That whole section comes away, and in theory the keyboard should now move forward a little bit. Yeah, the whole unit just moves forward a little bit. And that exposes another screw down in here. So in theory, this top cover now comes off, and we can disconnect the battery and the display cable. In fact, let's just loosen that off now. Just gonna lift this up. Okay, in fact it may just be a friction fit to connect to that one. It doesn't look like the top part comes away from the bottom part. So let's see what's underneath here. That is indeed a friction fit connector. So there's one. And then there's another connector here. All these wires are very soft. Very rubbery, that's interesting. So there's a connector here which looks like it's connected to the power board. So let's get this connector off. And this one as well, which I'm assuming is the backlight. And yep, then you can just remove the whole display assembly. So the keyboard assembly is loose, but it's got this cable here which also looks like it's friction fit, which it is. It's not too corroded, so that's good. So now we're pretty much in the guts of the machine. You've got a power board here on the top, you've got the motherboard across the bottom, and then you've got a hard drive and a floppy drive down here at the front. And it is indeed a Connor. model CP4044, which is what it said in the first part of the user manual, service manual. Floppy drive hasn't got any markings on it from this angle. This looks like it might be the IDE connector. This has got a Ward BIOS sticker on it, but it doesn't really look like a BIOS chip. This looks more like a BIOS chip. Cirrus Logic graphics card here. Sticker here, which appears to be original. Not sure what that covers up. What I can't see is a CMOS battery, although this looks suspiciously like a Dallas chip, the one with the BIOS sticker on it. This looks like it's the optional 2 megabyte memory module. Looks like the space for a second connector here, which hasn't been soldered to the board. So even if you wanted to upgrade this, you couldn't, which is interesting. So this chip here, which it looks like a Dallas chip, happens to be exactly the same size and dimensions and thickness of the Dallas chip. So it is, unfortunately. So that's what the CMOS battery is. And this one isn't socketed, it is soldered onto the board. So the only way we're going to get that BIOS working is to replace this. And I'm not sure that my soldering skills are good enough yet to attack a motherboard like this, which is a bit of a shame. Let's see if we can do something with a hard drive. Let's see if we can put a compact flash hard drive in and see if that's recognised at all. And if it is, we might not need to worry about the BIOS chip. So to remove the hard drive, there is a single screw that holds both of them in place just down there. And then there's this connector here that needs to come out. And this is just a push-in connector, apparently. It's very stiff, but it is simple as that. Let's remove this screw. Interesting, so the screw hasn't come out because the little lug that it screws into has also come out of its plastic housing, which is broken off. So that wasn't providing any support really. And I don't think I've just done that, I think that was broken because the pieces remaining are not visible. So the hard drive should just come out now. Aha, it slides sideways and then comes out. And there we have our problem. So although this is a 3.5-inch IDE drive, it doesn't have a normal IDE connector. It's got a proprietary Connor connector, which is a pain. So here's the drive details. It's a Connor CP4044, assembled in Malaysia, type 53, week 25 of 1991 maybe. No other marks that are helpful. So this proprietary connector is going to be a pain in the ass. So when we turn the computer on, the laptop on, the drive definitely spun up. So I'm guessing this cable is at least partly functioning. It looks in good condition. Doesn't look like there's any breakages in the cable. So I think the big problem is that CMOS battery, the Dallas chip. I think because it can't remember what hard disk is installed between boots, I think it's refusing to boot off the hard drive. The drive itself looks in very good condition. I can't see any bad components on this, but there are quite a lot of little surface mount resistors, for example. So it could be that one of them has failed. One of the circuits, the ICs, has also failed. But I don't think we're going to be able to do anything with this drive specifically because of its non-standard connection. That is a shame. So this is the little bracket that holds the hard disk and the floppy disk in place, and this little bit of brass shouldn't be here. It should be down here on the board in the little turret that's here, which is half missing. And as I said, that's not in the case. I think somebody's definitely been in here before, probably come to the same conclusion as me, that it's impossible to fix this drive. So you may be able to glue this back in anyway to give it some resistance, but we need to deal with that. So So this is the power board here. There's supposed to be a screw holding it in place, which is missing. The service manual says to remove the RAM and the ROM modules before removing the power board, so I presume it means this RAM module here, so I'm just going to remove that. And there we are, the little RAM module plugs straight into the motherboard. I say the other connector's missing, so this was never going to be upgradable beyond what's in there, the 3 megs. And then in theory this power board just comes out. There we go. So it's got a connector at this end and at this end. And the on-off switch is here and power input there. Again, it looks in pretty good condition. I can't see anything that looks overly warm. And then we have the motherboard. Here's the 386sx running at 16 megahertz, and then a socket for the 387. There's 2 other socketed chips here. Not sure exactly what those are, but probably... It can't be ROM though. I think this is the ROM over here. And then there's a chips and technology chip here, which is presumably part of the chipset. Okay, let's get this partly reassembled. This OK sticker here on the power board, by the way, I think is from when it had that warranty return. So the next thing is to try and repair this bit of case plastic and try and get this back in there. I don't think we're going to be able to repair the bits of plastic that broke off. I think we're going to have to just try and get this back in and hopefully glue it rigidly enough that it will hold the hard drive and the floppy drive in enough just to stop it from moving around. So let's do that. So I'm just going to get a small amount of glue and fill the existing space. Place that in there. And then just build up some glue around the edge. I was contemplating using the super glue and baking soda, baking powder trick. Never actually tried that yet. But because it's on a metal base rather than a plastic base, I decided against it. What I'm trying to do is get a reasonable thickness of glue around here to act as a surrogate shell. Trying not to get any in the thread. Just clean that away so that it sits flat. And there we go. Okay, so basically these 2 drives are removed by sliding this way. There's little notches in the bottom of the case and little notches on the drive, or this must be this one as well, and they slide this way to come out, and then this basically just stops them from sliding, which is how it holds them in position. So that screw doesn't have to be super tight, and it should still work, because as long as it's taking up space between the 2 drives, then it's working. There we go. So that cable's gone back on. So interestingly, the only purpose this hole serves is access to the RAM slot and to enable you to disassemble the display adapter. You can't get to the i386 or the SX or the 387, I should say, in this space, which you can often do on a lot of laptops from just a few years later. Let's see if we can get this display connector back in. Turns out it is one of those connectors where you lift them up. Oops. So if the display doesn't work when we reattach it, we'll know why. While we're at it, let's just loosen the keyboard one. There we go. Let's get that central screw back in. That will stop the display from moving. I'll try not to over tighten it given how that post broke there. So the keyboard connector goes in here. The keyboard has to be kind of half in for that to reach. It's quite a clever little design actually, that keyboard coming forward. I like that. But it gives you very limited access to the keyboard connector. The cable's not quite long enough to do it until it's 90% of the way in. So you're probably not getting this view on the camera, I'm afraid. No, that hasn't got it. That keyboard connector cable is not long enough. You do have to have it from it in its down position. Let's wedge it. Okay, hopefully that still works. Now the keyboard is held in place by the two screws that hold this panel down. It's quite an innovative design actually. It's different from any other laptop I've taken apart. Okay, let's put in the rest of the screws. Okay, it still lives, so that's good. Let's see if the keyboard works. Yes. Excellent. Okay, so we haven't been able to resolve the hard disk issue. We need to get that RTC clock chip removed and resoldered. As I said, I'm not prepared to do that just at the moment. I'm just going to try leaving it on overnight, see if it will just gather enough charge to retain settings between boots, but I don't think it's going to. All the memory is still being counted and passes, so that's good. We haven't fried that module. Yeah, no, it's still not having to boot off the hard disk, unfortunately. Okay, well this is DOSember. This is about DOS, so let's see what we can do about a machine with a single floppy disk drive. So unfortunately, the floppy disk drive has now failed. We can no longer boot off a bootable floppy disk. And it could be that I damaged the cable when I was inside. It could be just that the drive has decided to die. Or it could be something else that I've done stupidly. But it just can't boot off a bootable disk anymore. It sounds like the heads can't move. So we do need to take this apart again to service that drive as well. Slightly disappointing end to the video. What I was going to do is get Wolfenstein out and also Elite and see if we could have played those on this monochrome screen. I think Wolfenstein would have been dodgy with too much motion blur, but I think Elite might have worked really well. But we are not going to find out, at least not until we got some better way of getting that hard disk to work. So there we have it, the Philips PCL 304, one of only 4 laptops that I found that Philips ever made. Unfortunately, this one ended up being in worse condition than when we started. That's not great for a video. I am removing the sticky on the back still. I've got rid of about 80% of it. And I'm sure that floppy drive is serviceable, but I'm sure this will be featuring in a future video. It's interesting though that I've got 3 386 laptops from about this age, and they're all not quite working. And I think we're getting to the stage where things are just kind of at that age where they're just not gonna work, not with that significant soldering skills anyway. So if you're a casual collector, this is probably not the item for you. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. I certainly enjoyed making it, and unintentionally destroying this laptop. We will have another DOS video coming up next week. In the meantime, enjoy this short.